They fired me at 7 a.m. for missing an email sent at 4 a.m. But by noon, I'd signed with their biggest rival, and they lost their $2.4 billion project. Yes, this is how I made them taste their own poison. The thing about corporate revenge, it's not about screaming or making scenes. It's about understanding that sometimes the best response to a knife in your back is to quietly pull it out and hand it to their competition. They taught me how to play dirty. I just played it better. My name is Claire Maddox, and until 7 hours ago, I was the Senior Director of Business Development at Vanguard Dynamics, one of Denver's most prestigious renewable energy corporations. At 38, I'd built a reputation as the golden deal closer, the one they called when 9-figure contracts hung in the balance. The Denver skyline glittered through my corner office windows that morning, the Rocky Mountains standing sentinel in the distance. I'd earned that view through 14-hour days, countless red-eyes to Shanghai and Berlin, and an uncanny ability to read a room full of skeptical investors. My team respected me. Hell, some of them even loved me. I'd gone to bat for every single one of them during layoffs, salary negotiations, and the inevitable corporate politics that poisoned our industry. But none of that mattered to Michael Trent. Our new CEO had arrived 6 months ago like a cold front sweeping down from the mountains. Where our previous leadership believed in collaboration, Michael worshipped at the altar of management by pressure. His philosophy was simple: fear drives productivity. His favorite phrase during all-hands meetings was "trim the fat," usually accompanied by that reptilian smile that never reached his eyes. The irony wasn't lost on me that we were competing for a $2.4 billion clean energy project while our internal culture grew more toxic by the day. Riverside Innovations, our primary competitor, had been circling this deal like vultures. The project, a massive solar and wind hybrid system for Northstar Global, would essentially determine market leadership for the next decade. I'd been living and breathing this deal for 8 months. My team had mapped every decision-maker at Northstar, crafted proposals that addressed concerns they hadn't even articulated yet, and built relationships that went beyond conference room pleasantries. We were so close I could taste it. Which is why I'd been in the office until 2 a.m. the night before, finalizing our technical specifications with our engineering team in Singapore. My eyes had been burning, my third espresso growing cold on my desk. But I'd pushed through. The final report went out at 2:17 a.m., CC'd to all relevant stakeholders. I'd driven home through empty Denver streets, collapsed into bed, and set my alarm for 6:30. 4 hours of sleep had become my norm during crunch time. My body had adapted, even if my mind sometimes wandered to what I was sacrificing: dinners with friends, my nephew's soccer games, any semblance of a dating life. But I told myself it would be worth it. Close this deal. And my team would be set. Their jobs would be secure, bonuses guaranteed. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally take that vacation to Santorini I'd been promising myself for 3 years. I had no idea that while I slept, Michael Trent was crafting an email that would destroy everything I'd built. And he was doing it at 4:03 a.m. The shrill buzz of my phone yanked me from sleep at 6:30 a.m. My body moved on autopilot, shower, coffee, the usual morning ritual of a corporate warrior. I didn't check my emails immediately. After working until 2 a.m., I figured I'd earned 20 minutes of peace with my French press and the sunrise painting the Rockies gold. That peace shattered at 6:52 a.m. when I finally opened my laptop. The email sat at the top of my inbox like a ticking bomb. Sent at 4:03 a.m. Subject line: Urgent, response required by 5:00 a.m., board visibility. My stomach dropped as I read, Claire, the Northstar technical specifications require immediate revision. I need your comprehensive response to the attached 47 questions by 5:00 a.m. This is time critical for our Singapore meeting. Failure to respond will be considered a breach of your leadership responsibilities. Michael Trent, CEO, Vanguard Dynamics. CC, the entire board of directors, the executive committee. HR Director Patricia Nguyen. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the attachment. 47 questions that would take hours to answer properly. Questions about details we'd covered in 3 previous meetings. Questions designed not to gather information, but to create a paper trail. This wasn't about the North Star deal. This was an execution. I called Michael immediately. Straight to voicemail. I tried his assistant. No answer. The Singapore meeting he mentioned. I'd checked the calendar last night. No such meeting existed. At 6:58 a.m., another email landed, this time from Patricia in HR. Please join the mandatory video call at 7 a.m., link attached. I clicked the link with growing dread. The screen filled with faces. Michael's cold satisfaction. Patricia's studied neutrality. And worst of all, Evan Cross. Michael's 28-year-old protege. The Harvard MBA who'd been shadowing me for the past 2 months to learn the business. He was trying to suppress a smirk. Claire, Michael began without preamble. Can you explain your failure to respond to critical business communications? Michael, the email was sent at 4 a.m. The timestamp is irrelevant. You've consistently preached about always being available for critical deals. Were those just empty words? I was in the office until 2 a.m. finishing the Singapore report, which was submitted 17 minutes late, according to our records. His voice was surgical, each word designed to cut. This pattern of unreliability is unacceptable, especially given your compensation level. Pattern? I'd missed 1 email sent in the dead of night. 1 email in 5 years of stellar performance. Furthermore, he continued, your failure to respond has jeopardized our position with North Star. I've been informed they're concerned about our team's responsiveness. That was a lie. I'd spoken with James Chen at North Star yesterday afternoon. They were thrilled with our progress. Effective immediately, your employment with Vanguard Dynamics is terminated. Security will escort you from the building within the hour. Your access has already been revoked. The call ended. Just like that. No severance discussion, no transition plan, nothing. I sat staring at the blank screen, my coffee growing cold, while 5 years of my life evaporated. My laptop screen flashed, access denied. My company phone went dead. Even my parking pass, I'd discover later, had been deactivated. The text messages started flowing in from my team. Claire, what's happening? They locked you out of Slack. Evan just announced he's taking over the North Star deal. This is insane. Sarah, my lead analyst, called me directly. Claire, this is bullshit. He's been planning this. Evan's been having separate meetings with North Star, telling them he'll be the new point person. The pieces clicked into place. The 4 a.m. email wasn't about getting answers. It was about creating evidence. Michael needed cause to fire me without paying severance, and missing a middle-of-the-night deadline would do it. Evan would slide into my role, claim credit for 8 months of my work, and probably get a hefty signing bonus to boot. They'd executed this perfectly, surgically, everything technically above board, legally defensible, wrapped in corporate speak about performance standards and leadership accountability. I sat in my home office, still in my Vanguard branded fleece, watching the sunrise fade into ordinary daylight. 5 years of loyalty. Hundreds of millions in closed deals. A team that would take bullets for me. None of it mattered when someone higher up decided you were expendable. But as I stared at my personal phone, a different kind of message appeared, from a number I recognized but hadn't heard from in months. Claire, heard the news already. Industry's small. If you want to talk, I'm buying coffee. Laura Whitman, CEO Riverside Innovations. Already. The news was already out. In our incestuous industry, my execution was probably the morning gossip from Denver to Houston. I had 2 choices, curl up and lick my wounds, or remember that in business. The best revenge isn't emotional, it's transactional. I sat on my couch, still in shock, when my phone buzzed again. Another text from Laura. I mean it, downtown Ritz-Carlton, 8:30, their coffee doesn't suck. Laura Whitman. We'd crossed paths at every major energy conference for the past decade. She'd tried to poach me 3 times, once with an offer that made my eyes water. I'd always declined, loyal to Vanguard like an idiot. My phone kept lighting up. Former colleagues, industry contacts, even a few competitors. Word travels fast when someone like me gets axed. But one message stopped me cold, from James Morrison at North Star Global. Claire, just heard. This is unexpected. Are you still reachable at this number? Some concerns about transition? Transition. They were worried about their $2.4 billion project being handed to Evan Cross, a kid who couldn't tell a power purchase agreement from a pizza menu. I stood up, decision made. If Michael wanted to play corporate assassin, he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I knew where all the bodies were buried. The shower washed away the shock, replaced by something colder, clearer. I dressed carefully, my best suit, the Hermes scarf I'd bought after closing the Tokyo deal. Look like a victim. Become one. Look like a player. And doors open. The Ritz-Carlton lobby buzzed with the usual morning crowd of deal makers and power brokers. Laura sat in a corner booth, her silver hair catching the light, those hawk eyes that missed nothing. You look good for someone who just got shanked, she said, sliding a coffee across the table. It's amazing what rage and concealer can accomplish. She laughed, but her eyes stayed serious. Michael Trent's an ass. Everyone knows it. But Claire, I didn't ask you here to commiserate. I know exactly why you asked me here. Do you? She leaned forward. Because I think you're sitting on something more valuable than you realize. The North Star deal isn't just about the contract, it's about the relationships, the technical nuances, the unspoken concerns they haven't put in any RFP, all of which are technically Vanguard's intellectual property. Are they? Laura's smile was sharp. Did you sign any new NDAs specific to North Star? Has the deal been formally contracted? Because from where I sit, you're a free agent with deep industry knowledge gained over a distinguished career. She was right. I'd been so careful about documentation, so thorough in my legal reviews, that I knew exactly where the lines were drawn. The preliminary negotiations, the relationship building, the strategic insights, none of it was formally protected yet. Michael's haste to fire me had created a window. What are you proposing? I asked. Senior Strategic Advisor, 6-month initial contract, renewable. 7 figures, plus a success bonus if we win North Star. That's generous. No, it's smart. I've watched you work. Claire, you don't just close deals, you architect them. Riverside has good tech, maybe better than Vanguard's. But we've been missing the human element. The ability to read a room, to know that James Morrison hates PowerPoints but loves whiteboard sessions, that his CFO Rebecca won't approve anything unless she can see 5-year maintenance costs broken down quarterly. She knew I knew these things. Details that weren't in any database, weren't written in any report. The soft intelligence that made 8-figure deals happen. There's more, Laura continued. Riverside isn't just competing for North Star. We're building something bigger, a new kind of energy company, one that doesn't eat its own. My phone buzzed. Sarah again. Evan just called in all hands. He's saying you had a breakdown, and that's why you were let go. People are pissed. A breakdown. Of course, discredit the departed, make them seem unstable. Corporate Playbook 101. I showed Laura the message. Her expression hardened. Charming. So what do you say, Claire? Want to help me teach Vanguard a $2.4 billion lesson about loyalty? I thought about my team, about Sarah and the others who'd trusted me. They'd be fine. They were smart, adaptable. But Evan would take credit for everything we'd built together. Michael would get his quarterly numbers. The board would applaud his decisive leadership. Unless I changed the game entirely. I'll need full autonomy on the North Star approach, I said. No micromanagement, no second guessing. Done. And I want it in writing that if we win, my team at Vanguard gets recruitment priority here. They don't deserve to suffer for Michael's games. Laura extended her hand. Welcome to Riverside, Claire. Let's go make some noise. We shook on it. By 9:15 a.m., I was no longer unemployed. I was a weapon aimed directly at Vanguard's heart. The best part? They'd loaded the gun themselves. The Riverside offices occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking the South Platte River. Modern, open, everything Vanguard pretended to be, but wasn't. Laura walked me through like she was showing off a prize horse, which I suppose I was. "Legal's already drawn up your contract," she said, leading me to a conference room where 3 lawyers waited. "We want this ironclad before noon." Smart. In our world, timing was everything. I read every line, every clause. The numbers were even better than discussed. Laura wanted me hungry, not desperate. The success bonus alone would set me up for life. But buried in subsection 7C was the real ammunition. Consultant authorized to engage directly with any and all potential clients regarding pending opportunities. Translation: I could call James Morrison at North Star right now. "One addition," I said, pulling out my pen. "I want explicit authorization to present a competing proposal for any deal currently in preliminary negotiations." The lawyers exchanged glances. Laura just smiled. At it. By 10:30 a.m., I had a Riverside email, business cards being rushed through printing, and an office with a view that made my old one look like a closet. But I wasn't here for the perks. I pulled out my personal phone and scrolled to James Morrison's number. 2 rings. "Claire, Jesus, I've been trying to reach you. What the hell happened?" "Corporate restructuring," I said smoothly. "James, I'm calling because I'm concerned about the project continuity. I know Vanguard's put Evan Cross in charge. That kid. Claire. No offense to your former company, but he spent our last meeting explaining why solar panels don't work when it's cloudy. My team thinks he's either an idiot or thinks we are perfect. I understand your concerns. That's actually why I'm calling. I've just joined Riverside Innovations as Senior Strategic Advisor. I'd like to discuss ensuring your project gets the attention it deserves." Silence. Then, "You're at Riverside? Since when?" "Since about an hour ago." He laughed, the kind that comes from recognizing a chess move. "Laura Whitman doesn't waste time, does she? Claire, cards on the table. We're supposed to have final presentations next week. Vanguard's scheduled for Tuesday." "I'm aware. I designed that presentation." "Right. Well, Evan just called to introduce himself and requested we push it to next month. Says he needs time to reassess the strategic approach." Of course he did. Evan was scrambling, probably just realizing the 50-page technical specification I'd prepared might as well be in Sanskrit to him. "James, what if Riverside could present Monday with a fully developed proposal that addresses every concern your board raised in the preliminary meetings?" "Monday? That's in 4 days. I know exactly what North Star needs. More importantly, I know what you're not saying you need. The concerns about grid integration in Montana, Rebecca's worries about maintenance contracts, the board's unspoken preference for modular expansion capabilities." Another pause. "You know about Montana?" Montana was their stealth project, not mentioned in any RFP. I'd figured it out through careful analysis of their land acquisitions and grid applications. Classic Claire homework that Evan would never think to do. "Riverside's technology is particularly suited for high-altitude, variable weather installations," I said, "unlike some competitors who are still figuring out why solar panels need sunlight." This time his laugh was genuine. "Monday, 2 p.m. Full presentation to the board. Claire, I'm going to be straight with you. Some members are already leaning Vanguard based on your work. But if Evan's running the show..." "Understood. We'll see you Monday." I hung up and found Laura standing in my doorway, grinning like a shark. "Monday," she said. Aggressive. I like it. "We need to move fast. Michael will realize his mistake soon. Probably try to get me locked up in legal challenges. But if we can present before they can react." "Already on it. Legal's preparing for any cease and desist attempts. You focus on the pitch. Whatever resources you need, they're yours." I thought about what I needed. The technical specs were in my head. The financial models I could rebuild from memory. But there was one thing that would make this perfect. I need to make a call to someone still at Vanguard, completely above board, nothing that violates any policies. Laura raised an eyebrow but nodded. I dialed Sarah's personal number. Hey, it's me. I have a question, purely hypothetical. If someone were to start recruiting for a senior analyst position at a competitor, with a 40% salary increase and actual work-life balance, when would be the appropriate time to submit applications? Hypothetically, Sarah's voice was carefully neutral. I'd say immediately, along with 5 other hypothetical analysts who might be tired of being treated like disposable assets. Interesting. Well, hypothetically, keep an eye on Riverside's careers page around 1 p.m. today. Will do. Oh, and Claire? Evan just asked me to explain what a power purchase agreement is. This is going to be a disaster. I smiled. Yes. Yes, it is. The next 72 hours blurred together in a caffeine-fueled marathon. But this time, I wasn't alone. Laura had assembled Riverside's A-team, engineers who actually understood their technology, financial analysts who could model scenarios in their sleep, and a design team that made our presentations look like art. By Saturday morning, we had something beautiful. Not just a proposal, but a complete reimagining of what North Star's project could be. Where Vanguard had offered a standard solution, we presented innovation, adaptive grid technology that could handle Montana's weather extremes, modular systems that could expand with demand, and maintenance costs that undercut Vanguard by 18% over 10 years. I saved the masterstroke for slide 47, a risk mitigation strategy that addressed every single concern James Morrison had mentioned in our off-the-record conversations over the past 6 months. Concerns he'd never put in writing, never formally communicated to Vanguard. But I remembered every word. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. I knew Michael would be getting reports about my move to Riverside. I knew Evan was probably panicking, trying to decode my work. But they were playing checkers while I was already 3 moves ahead in chess. Monday arrived crisp and clear, Denver's skyline sharp against the mountains. I dressed carefully, my lucky navy suit, the one I'd worn to close the Seoul deal. Laura insisted on driving us to North Star's offices herself. You know, she said as we navigated downtown traffic, I've been in this business 30 years. I've never seen anyone weaponize institutional knowledge quite like this. I'm not weaponizing anything. I'm providing superior value to a client who deserves it. She laughed. Sure. And the fact that it's going to cost your former employer $2.4 billion is just a happy coincidence. We arrived at 1:45. James Morrison met us in the lobby, and I could read the relief in his eyes. Claire, Laura. The board's assembled, fair warning. Michael Trent called our chairman 3 times this weekend. Saying what? Laura asked. That hiring you would be inadvisable, that there might be legal complications. Charles told him to pound sand, but still. They're rattled. Good. Rattled people make mistakes. The boardroom was intimidating by design, 20-foot ceilings, a table that could double as a landing strip, and 8 faces that collectively controlled billions in energy investments. I knew 5 of them personally. The other 3 I'd researched down to their golf handicaps. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, clicking to the first slide. Riverside Innovations doesn't just want to build your project. We want to revolutionize it. What followed was the performance of my career. Every slide anticipated a question before it was asked. Every technical specification addressed a pain point they'd experienced with previous vendors. When Rebecca, the CFO, started to ask about maintenance scalability, I clicked to a slide titled Rebecca's Maintenance Concerns with a detailed breakdown that made her jaw drop. How did you? She started. Because I listen, I said simply. In our industry, everyone talks, not enough people hear. 40 minutes in, I could feel the room shifting. Board members were leaning forward, taking notes, asking the kinds of questions that meant they were already picturing implementation. Then I played the ace. Now, regarding your Montana expansion, I said, clicking to a map that showed not just their announced sites, but the 3 locations they'd secretly optioned. Riverside's cold weather optimization makes us uniquely suited for high-altitude installations. Charles Hartley, the chairman, set down his pen. That information isn't public. No, but land records are. County permit applications are. Grid interconnection requests are. I connected the dots because that's what a real partner does. We anticipate your needs before you articulate them. The room went quiet. Then Charles did something I'd never seen in a boardroom. He started a slow clap. Others joined in. "Claire," he said, "in 30 years, that's the most comprehensive pitch I've ever seen. You didn't just answer our questions, you answered questions we didn't know we had." We wrapped at 3:30. Handshakes all around, promises to move quickly on their decision. But I could read the room. This wasn't a maybe, this was a when. As we reached the lobby, my phone exploded with notifications. 47 missed calls, dozens of texts. All from Vanguard numbers. One voicemail from Michael Trent himself. "Claire, there's been a misunderstanding. Call me immediately so we can discuss your reinstatement." Reinstatement. They'd figured out what Evan couldn't deliver. They'd done the math on what losing North Star meant, and now they wanted their weapon back. I deleted the voicemail and looked at Laura. How long until they make it official? She was already reading an email on her phone. James Morrison just asked if we can have contracts ready by 5 p.m. today. 11:45 a.m. to 5 p.m. In less than 6 hours, I'd taken Vanguard's crown jewel and handed it to their biggest rival. "Think Michael's figured it out yet?" Laura asked as we walked to her car. I thought about Evan, probably sweating through his shirt as he tried to explain to the board why North Star hadn't returned their calls. About Michael, realizing his power play had cost them their biggest opportunity in a decade. About my old team, who'd be getting Riverside offer letters by end of day. "Oh, he's figured it out," I said. "He's just learning what I learned this morning, some emails you can't afford to miss, and some people you can't afford to lose." By 4:47 p.m., the contracts were signed. $2.4 billion moved from Vanguard's projected revenue to Riverside's confirmed portfolio. I sat in my new office, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. When Laura burst through the door with champagne and a grin that could power the city. "It's official. North Star just sent the execution copies. We've got it." The cork popped like a gunshot. As she poured, she pulled up her phone. "Oh, and you're going to want to see this." It was a Bloomberg alert. Vanguard Dynamics stock drops 12% on loss of major North Star contract to rival Riverside Innovations. 12%, nearly $1 billion in market cap, evaporated. All because Michael Trent wanted to save my salary. "There's more," Laura scrolled. Someone leaked an internal email. My blood chilled as I read. From Charles Hartley, North Star Global. To Michael Trent, Vanguard Dynamics, CC, North Star Board of Directors. Michael. After careful consideration, we've awarded the renewable energy project to Riverside Innovations. This decision was influenced significantly by the expertise and relationships brought by Claire Maddox, whose unexpected availability this morning allowed Riverside to present a superior proposal. We're disappointed that Vanguard chose to terminate Ms. Maddox's employment, especially given her integral role in our negotiations. Her replacement appeared unprepared for the complexity of this project. We wish you luck in your future endeavors. Charles Hartley, Chairman, North Star Global. Accidentally CC'd to a Reuters reporter. Laura said, "Oops." My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Vanguard's board members, industry colleagues, reporters. I ignored them all except one, Sarah. "We did it." Her text read, "Evan locked himself in his office after the news broke. Michael's been called to an emergency board meeting. Also, check your email in about 10 minutes. 10 minutes later, my inbox pinged. 6 resignation letters from Vanguard's best analysts, all accepting positions at Riverside. My entire core team. Following me across enemy lines. But the sweetest message came at 6 p.m. from Patricia Nguyen, Vanguard's HR director. "Claire, The board has asked me to explore options for your return. They're prepared to offer significant compensation adjustments and the EVP title. Please call me Executive Vice President, the position Michael had dangled in front of Evan like a carrot. I forwarded it to Laura without comment. You going to respond? She asked. Already did. I showed her my reply. Patricia, I'm afraid I have a prior commitment. Best regards. As the office emptied for the evening, I found myself alone with my thoughts. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by something unexpected, not satisfaction, exactly, but a kind of clarity. My desk phone rang. The caller ID showed Vanguard's main line. Against my better judgment, I answered. Claire. Michael's voice was stripped of its usual arrogance. We need to talk. No. Michael. We don't. You don't understand. The board? They're calling for my resignation. This deal, it was my responsibility to retain it. Funny how it's your responsibility now. This morning, I was the failure who couldn't answer a 4 a.m. email. That was a miscommunication. Evan presented information that suggested, stop. I cut him off. You want to know the difference between us? I've never fired someone to cover my own incompetence. I've never thrown away loyalty for politics. You taught me something valuable today, though. What's that? That the best revenge isn't emotional. It's not about anger or getting even. It's about showing someone the exact cost of their choices. $2.4 billion. Michael, that's what your 4 a.m. email cost. Silence. Then, the board meeting is in an hour. They're going to terminate me. Yes, they are. You could stop this. One call to Hartley, tell him you'll consult for both companies. I could, but I won't. You made your choice at 4:03 a.m. I made mine at noon. The difference is, I can live with mine. I hung up. Through my window, I could see Vanguard's building 6 blocks away. Somewhere in there. A boardroom was about to explode. Careers would end. Blame would be assigned. And Evan Cross would learn that stealing someone else's work only works if you understand it first. My phone lit up with a text from James Morrison. Dinner Thursday to celebrate? My treat. Also, Rebecca wants to know if you'd consider a board advisory position. She's never seen anyone reverse engineer our Montana plans like that. I smiled, typing back, Thursday works. Tell Rebecca I'm interested. The shadows lengthened across downtown Denver. In 12 hours, I'd gone from fired to hired, from discarded to indispensable. Vanguard's stock would recover. Eventually. Michael would land somewhere, probably. Evan would update his LinkedIn to hide this disaster. But tonight, I'd won. Not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd shown them exactly what they'd thrown away. And in corporate America, that's the revenge that truly counts. Success that makes your enemies question every choice that led them to underestimate you. I raised my champagne glass to the window, toasting Vanguard's darkened boardroom in the distance. Thanks for the lesson, Michael. Class dismissed. 6 months later, I stood before Riverside's annual shareholder meeting, presenting the North Star project's ahead of schedule progress. The Montana expansion was exceeding projections. Our innovative cold weather solutions were being studied by competitors, including Vanguard's new leadership. Michael Trent had lasted exactly 90 minutes in that emergency board meeting. His resignation to pursue other opportunities made headlines for a day before the industry moved on. Last I heard, he was consulting for a startup in Austin, far from Denver's energy corridors. Evan Cross returned to Harvard for his PhD. Turns out losing a $2.4 billion deal in your first week as director makes corporate life challenging. Sarah told me he'd called her once, fishing for information about how I'd built those client relationships. She'd hung up on him. But here's what they don't tell you about revenge. The best part isn't watching your enemies fall. It's building something better from the ashes they created. My team from Vanguard had flourished at Riverside. Sarah was now leading her own division. We'd poached 12 more top performers, each one bringing expertise and relationships that multiplied our capabilities. Laura joked that I'd executed the most elegant hostile takeover in industry history, not of a company, but of its soul. The numbers told their own story. Riverside's valuation had doubled. We'd won 3 more major contracts, each time competing directly against Vanguard. The industry newsletters had started calling it the Maddox effect, the quantifiable impact of treating your people like assets instead of expenses. I'd even instituted a new company policy: no emails between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. unless the building was literally on fire. And you know what? Our productivity went up. Standing at that podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, I thought about that morning 9 months ago, how I'd sat in my home office, discarded and humiliated, watching my career evaporate over a missed midnight message. In closing, I said to the shareholders, Riverside's success this year proves a simple principle. Loyalty isn't a weakness to be exploited, it's a strength to be cultivated. When you invest in your people, they invest in your success. When you throw them away, I clicked to my final slide, a graph showing Riverside's growth trajectory crossing above Vanguard's declining market share. Someone else gets to benefit from your mistake. The applause was thunderous. As I left the stage, my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification, a connection request from someone I hadn't heard from in months. Michael Trent. His message was brief. Congratulations on your success. I've learned valuable lessons from our time at Vanguard. Would welcome the chance to discuss potential collaboration. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, hit decline. Some bridges are meant to stay burned, not out of spite, but as monuments to the moments that transform us. Michael had taught me the cost of misplaced loyalty. More importantly, he'd taught me my own worth. The Colorado sun was setting as I walked to my car, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new deals to chase, new mountains to climb. But tonight, I'd allow myself this moment of satisfaction. They'd fired me for missing a 4 a.m. email. By noon, I'd taken their future. By sunset, I'd rebuilt my own. And that's the thing about corporate revenge. It's not about destroying those who wronged you. It's about succeeding so spectacularly that they're forced to watch your rise from the ruins of their choice. It's about proving that the person they discarded was the very one they couldn't afford to lose. Michael thought he was teaching me a lesson about corporate hierarchy. Instead, he taught me about my own power. And for that lesson, I suppose I should thank him. But I won't. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace justice. Have you ever turned a career setback into your greatest triumph? I'd love to hear about it in the comments.